How's it going, YouTube? Your boy Chill here. Welcome back to another video. Hopefully the grind has been good for y'all and that's a bit too strenuous. I know that the grind has been kind of wearing a lot of people out lately, but hey, a lot of us want to get that loot, man. Hey, gotta get to that 450 so that we can start getting tier 5s. I know we all want those like shiny rolls, so keep grinding, gamers. You'll get it there eventually. But today I want to talk about the auto rifle from Trials, Auric Disabler, and why this thing is gonna be nutty when lightweights get nerfed. This thing has the capability to be one of the best weapons in the game. However, the meta that it stands right now is kind of holding it back slightly, but just wait for it. This weapon, you're going to want to hunt for it. I'm telling you that right now. Plus, it has some pretty strong PvE perks for ad clearing and some Strand synergy perks as well. So definitely some useful perks to get on this weapon. So definitely keep an eye out for this one. So I'm going to go over the god rules here. My god rules for PvE and PvP, as well as a weird thing about this auto rifle that I want to discuss in this video, but I'll wait until the PvP section specifically because that's where it matters more. So hope you all enjoy this video. Like, comment, subscribe if you do. Let's get into it. So, going over the perks of this auto. In the third column, we've got Gut Shot Straight, Dragonfly, Dynamic Sway, Hatchling, Lone Wolf, Slice, and Zen Moment. In the fourth column, we got Desperate Measures, Kill Clip, Onslaught, Sword Logic, Tap the Trigger, Target Lock, and Tear. Now, PvE first. Gut Shot Straight, you're not going to use this for PvE. I know there's a nice combination for Zali's Bane with Gut Shot Straight, and I believe Explosive Payload or One for All. I forgot what perk it is, but it does increase the body shot damage of this weapon. So in that niche scenario, you could use it, but for this auto rifle, you're not going to be using this thing. It's not really worth it. Dragonfly is actually a very good perk for ad clearing, especially in conjunction with some other perk combinations, which this auto does have quite a few that will benefit Dragonfly immensely. So Dragonfly is definitely one to keep an eye out for here. Hatching is going to be a very good perk to have for Strand Warlock specifically because Bungie's going to be buffing Weave Walk and Weaver's Call, so you definitely want to get those. Definitely keep an eye out for Hatching for that perk combination so that we can summon an army of threatlings to do your bidding and just, pair that with Swarmers and it's going to be a nice build. I'm telling you that right now. Lone Wolf, that's more for PvP, so wait for the PvP section on that one. Slice is actually a very slept on perk in PvE. I do know a lot of people rock Slice on the Salvation's Edge SMG with that and Chaos Reshape. So Slice, while yes, it's kind of a niche perk, it's actually very strong for PvE for debuffing targets at a distance and, helping your team survive if you need to lower a champion's DPS or a boss, whatever. And it actually does work on raid bosses. So definitely keep out for Slice. If you're able to proc that and shoot a raid boss with that, you're nerfing the damage that they do to you and it could possibly help your team survive if you run out of your well, don't have any rifts up. And then we have Zen Moment, which is more for the PvP section, so wait for that one. Then, of course, in the fourth column, we've got Desperate Measures. It gives a 10% buff at ×1 stack. And we get a grenade and melee kill grants additional 20% damage increase for another 7 seconds. Scoring all of them together gives a max up 30% increase to damage. Kind of like One for All, but you got a lot more hoops and hurdles to kind of build into it. Although right now with Armor 3.0, we do have a lot of access to more abilities this time around, with 100 stats being way more energy gains out of your abilities than normally back in the previous system. So you could definitely make this perk work at PvE. It's just my personal preference. I don't want to jump through the extra hoops and hurdles. I just want to put on a perk and just have it do everything for me. Then we got Kill Clip for a 25% increase to damage after killing an enemy and reloading after 3 seconds. So this one's always good. It's definitely a nice perk for PvE now. I often forget that you can often refresh Kill Clip now because I'm so used to the old system where you couldn't refresh it. So Kill Clip's a good option. Now, Onslaught. I'm an Onslaught stan, okay? I've always loved Onslaught and weapons. Something about Onslaught ever since Breakneck came out with that thing. Like, I've loved that perk, and I'm glad that they brought it back to a lot of autos now. And I believe that this perk is probably the best perk you could have on any weapon that can roll it. Reason being is because I know a lot of people go over damage buffs and higher damage for clearing out ads. But here's the thing, though. In PvE, there's a difference between high damage and time to kill. There's a difference between that. Damage perks can still buff the DPS of your weapons to kill enemies faster. However, there's also RPM, the rate of time it takes to kill said enemy. So while yes, you have damage perks to increase the damage you do for enemies to kill them faster, Onslaught is the opposite end of the spectrum, increasing your fire rate so you put out more damage faster. So a lot of people I know go for damage perks, but in my opinion, and I've always stood by this, Onslaught is the best perk for PvE, hands down, bar none. Onslaught, once you get up to ×3 and you're just spraying down bullets on an enemy, you'll kill them way faster than a damage perk of 35% increase will ever do compared to an RPM increase of the weapon. Plus, you get stacking reload benefits as well so that you can reload fast and chain into more enemies and just keep that chain going. Onslaught, hands down, bar none, is my favorite perk for this auto. I've used it with another combination perk, which I'll get into later. It's disgusting. Trust me, once you guys use Onslaught for a good amount of time, you'll understand compared to Sword Logic and other damage perks as well that it's nowhere close. Onslaught is just the better perk overall. Then, of course, we have Sword Logic, which does give a stack of damage buff depending on what type of enemy you kill. Now, in PvE, to get the most stacks at ×4, you need to kill a boss level enemy, which in auto rifle, you're not really doing. So more often than not, you're going to be at ×1 at ×2 stacks. So at ×1, you get a 50% increase, ×2 is a 25% increase, and maybe the random mini boss, which gives a 35% increase to damage. You can kind of make it work, but more realistically, you're going to be in the 25% damage increase range. So it's still a nice buff, kind of similar to Desperate Measures, except without the hoops and hurdles. It just depends on the type of enemy you kill. But honestly, again, like I said before, Onslaught, I'm hands down for that one. But if you want to use Sword Logic, you can use that one. Tap the Trigger, that's more for the PvP section, so wait for that. As well as Target Lock is also for the PvP section, so wait for that one. Then lastly, we have Tear, which is a new perk that they added last episode, which allows precision final blows to cause nearby targets to be severed. Another way to debuff targets from a distance. So if you don't like Slice having to pop your class ability to do debuffing at a distance, you can use Tear instead. However, that's more for beneficial for ad clearing capabilities and nerfing enemies damage for an ad clusters. So it may be like mythic Kepler content, that would be more beneficial, but Slice having the capability of choosing what you debuff with the amount of stacks that you are allowed it to, and having the freedom to choose which enemies you need, that one is more viable in my opinion if you're going for the debuff route. Now you can still use Tear to proc Severing, and that way you can make tangles off of enemy defeats. So if you want to capitalize on Strand synergy with your Strand subclasses, there's that angle you can play with it. But honestly, if you're going for more Severing for debuffing targets, Slice is the better option. All right, with all that being said, my PvE god roll for this, again, this is a tier 5 system. In the third column, it would be Dragonfly first, then Hatchling, then Slice. That way you have Dragonfly for ad clearing, you have Hatchling for Strand synergy with Strand Warlocks with Weaver's Call and Weave Walk as well, getting buffed pretty soon. And then you have Slice for debuffing targets from a distance. So that way you can help out your team, debuff a raid boss and nerf their damage. Whatever you need to do, you have that capability. And in the fourth column, it's going to be Onslaught, Tear, and maybe Sword Logic. Depending on the type of content, Sword Logic is kind of nice to have just in case you can't kill enemies very effectively. You need a damage buff from one kill right away. Sword Logic does allow that capability as well. Then of course Tear, we have that capability for severing a cluster of ads for, making tangle generation or just playing into our Strand kit for any of our fragments that we have. But Onslaught, hands down, bar none, is my favorite option. I've been using a roll of Dragonfly and Onslaught. Whenever I get a precision kill, I get the Onslaught ×1 and the Dragonfly explosion as well. If it kills a cluster of enemies, I get immediately up to ×3 Onslaught, and I can keep that with me for as long as I keep slaying out ads. Having that combination of Dragonfly and Onslaught, I'm telling you, once you get that roll and try it, it's a night and day difference for any PvE weapon you've ever used. The ad clearing capabilities is stupid. I love this on my auto. I actually have a tier 4 of this auto right now with that specific perk combination. I use it pretty much in my PvE content whenever I'm using, a primary and special weapon. Whenever I'm not using double special, that is my main go-to perk for this. So yeah, PvE, again, third column, Dragonfly, Hatchling, Slice. Fourth column would be Onslaught, Sword Logic, and Tear. Now, moving on to the PvP section. Now, before we get into this, I want you to look at this clip here. Look at the recoil direction of this auto rifle. Do you see what I see? I don't know what it is that Bungie did to this auto, but for some reason, it kicks like a horse. It just bucks like crazy, and I don't know why. For reference, here is the number, which is a year 1 auto rifle that has a similar sight and is an all-on auto. Look at the difference between the shot pattern between this one and the previous one. Notice how the whole gun is not bucking around like crazy compared to Auric the Stabilizer. I don't know what it is for this auto. I think it might be bugged right now in its current state, but the recoil direction, it just kicks, man. So it needs something to help boost its stability and consistency in PvP right now, because that kick paired on top of flinch, you are not landing shots. There were several games of comp that I did with a combination of Slice and Target Lock, and every time I got shot, I was missing my enemy. I was not landing shots at all. I kept getting flinched off repeatedly, or because of the bounce of the auto rifle, whenever I was trying to adjust for it, it was not enough to compensate for it, and it would just go right over the enemy's head. It's something about this auto right now is bugged, and I hope Bungie fixes it soon, but I want you guys to be aware of this now. The recoil direction of this auto is messed up. It bounces too much, so you need consistency perks to make this auto feel usable. Even with Omolon Fluid Dynamics, it still needs help. Now, with that being said, let's go over the perks for PvP. With that being said, Dynamic Rate Reduction actually pairs very nicely to compensate for the recoil direction of this weapon and it bouncing all over the place. So that way, Sustained Fire will allow it to build up stability and decrease the accuracy cone size and growth of this weapon. If you see my Trials video, that's actually the roll I used with that and Kill Clip. That roll right there was actually very nice and consistent, so I was not getting kicked off as much. There was still times where I would, but more often than not, I was not. So Dynamic Sway was a nice added benefit to that. Next, we have Lone Wolf. And I would recommend this perk normally, but again, the recoil direction is bugged. But whenever Bungie does fix it, Lone Wolf is going to be very nice to have for PvP because, of course, that aim assist bump, the AE increase as well as the ADS duration multiplier, all that on this auto rifle to make it even more snappier and more consistent to the head is going to be nice. Now, for the last perk, this is the one I recommend above all else. Now, I know a lot of people always swear about Lone Wolf or dynamic sway reduction, I have always been a stan for Zen Moment. And it started with No Calamity back in year 1. That auto rifle had Zen Moment, and whenever you start shooting with Zen Moment, after a certain number of hits, it does not move. It becomes a laser. I know people joke around Summoner being a laser. Zen Moment on an auto rifle or an SMG makes it a laser. It does not bounce or kick at all. And that pairs very well with this auto rifle, with it bucking like a horse. And when it has flinch and it starts kicking like crazy, it counteracts that with flinch resistance over time as well. Zen Moment is the end-all, be-all role that I'm going to claim and die on the hill right now is the perk you want for PvP right now in this current sandbox and the way the auto functions now. If you cannot get that, Dynamic Sway is another option as well. If you want to use Lone Wolf, you can, but just be aware, you will get flinched a lot, so you need to stack on the stability on this weapon. Moving on to the fourth column, we've got Kill Clip. Kill Clip, again, the 25% increase of the damage output after getting a kill and reloading. At base, our TTK is a 0.8 second TTK with 7 precision headshots. With Kill Clip, that goes down to 0.67 TTK with 5 headshots and 1 body shot. So we do have some forgiveness for that TTK value for allowing a single body shot miss off the head. So Kill Clip is a very good perk for this column. Next, we got Sword Logic, which, however, in PvP did get nerfed. It used to be the 25% increase like it was in PvE. However, I believe some weapon nerfed it, so that way now it's a 50% increase, which does allow for a 0.67 TTK value. However, you need to get 6 headshots. So a little bit less forgiveness in that value, but you do have that availability. Then, of course, we have Target Lock, which ramps up the damage of this auto rifle. The more consistent we're landing our shots on the target. With Target Lock, it does not change the TTK values of this auto rifle, but however, it does allow for a 6 headshot, 1 body shot time to kill. It adds a slight bit of more forgiveness, but you're not going to shift the TTK value at all. So that's another option, but I want you to be aware of that. You're not shifting the TTK value. You're just adding more forgiveness to your base TTK. Just keep that in mind. Then lastly, Onslaught again. I know what you're thinking. Why Onslaught again? I've used a summoner with Heal Clip and Onslaught in PvP for trials when it first came out, and I kid you not. The second you get Onslaught ×1, no one's beating out your TTK value. The amount of hits you can get out so fast, the amount of flinch you're doing on top of that, you make your enemies miss all their shots. And the fact is that after you get that single kill, you can chain it to ×2 and to ×3. And just for reference, Onslaught at ×1 is a 0.67 TTK for 7 crits to the head. At ×2, it goes down to a 0.58 with 7 crits to the head. And then if you're able to get to ×3, which in 6s you'll be able to pretty consistently, it goes down to a 0.5 TTK. Far faster than Kill Clip, Sword Logic, or even Target Lock. That is the fastest TTK of any primary weapon. Now, it does require a lot of setup, so more often than not, you're going to be at the 0.67 TTK at ×1. However, the amount of bullets you're putting out so fast results in more flinch to the enemy, making them more inconsistent in their shots and more likely to miss, and you more likely to win. So, Onslaught is my perk to hunt for PvP. I know, like I said, I'm a stan for Onslaught, so I'm going to die on that hill. Onslaught, PvE, PvP, hands down, bar none. People are sleeping on this perk. This perk is stupid good. Trust me, if you've used an auto rifle with Onslaught in PvP, or PvE for that matter, you guys know how good it is. So do not sleep on this perk. This allows for a lot of kill chaining, especially if you use like a certain one-eyed mask build that you've seen in my videos lately. It's going to be disgusting. I'm telling you that now. So for my role for PvP, I'm going to give you the tier 5 role to hunt for specifically, but again, I'll tell you which is the best set of perks to hunt for specifically. In the third column, I'm going to choose Lone Wolf so we can get the aim assist bumps, the AE bonus, as well as the ADS duration multiplier, so that way it feels a lot more snappier. Of course, Zen Moment, because that's just the end-all be-all perk, even better than Dynamic Sway Reduction. Even though some people swear it's better, it depends on the type of weapon. On this auto rifle, Zen Moment, it far exceeds Dynamic Sway Reduction. And then lastly, I'm going to recommend Slice, because having that sever capability on an auto rifle, you are nerfing people's TTK values. You're making them have to get one more shot to get a kill on you. And that already on this auto rifle that has a fairly decent TTK value, not even considering the fact if you had Kill Clip on top of it too, you're going to beat out every single person you go into combat with as long as you sever them. I know a lot of people sleep on it, but this perk, it's nothing to snooze over. If you see someone with Slice, be ready for when they sever you. And if you get severed, stay out of combat until that goes away, because you are going to get reduced damage on your weapons and you're not going to hit your normal TTK value. So you need to keep an eye on that and compensate for that if you're going against someone with Slice. Definitely Slice if you want to go for a debuffing route and nerf the TTK of the people you're going against. Then lastly, in the final column, I'm going to be choosing Kill Clip for the 25% damage increase to allow for a 5 crit 1 body shot TTK. Then if you're going for the Slice route, I'm actually going to recommend Tap the Trigger so that way you still get that consistency bump, especially with the recoil direction of this auto. However, it does get fixed. You can't swap that to something else, but it's just there so that way your Slice procs are more likely to hit and you're more likely to stay on target whenever you start shooting. Then, of course, lastly, Onslaught again, baby. After even getting to ×2 of Onslaught, going from a 0.8 TTK to a 0.58 TTK, yeah, you can't beat that, man. Even just a 0.67, but the amount of fire rate that you're getting on top of that, yeah, Onslaught is the end-all be-all roll. For the bro, I'm actually going to go Arrowhead Break so that way it tightens up the recoil direction even tighter so that way it doesn't kick around all over the place. Even though it's 65 is most likely vertical, it has a wider window to where it will bounce all over the place. So Arrowhead Break, I think, will be able to keep it more in line and straight than any other barrel would be able to. Then for the mag perk, I'm going to recommend Ricochet rounds so that way you get that increase the range and stability. And you have the ability to ricochet rounds off of walls so that way if you're someone's hiding around the corner, if you're able to aim it right and shoot a wall next to them and ricochet it into them, you can prevent them from recovering behind a wall. And then for the masterwork, I'm either going to recommend stability or range. It just depends on the feel of this weapon to use specifically, depending on what you want to go for. Again, if you feel it's not consistent enough, stability. If you feel like it's okay in your hands, then go range. And then for the mag perk, you can either go for a zoom magnification, you can go for an anti-flinch mod, or you can go ballistics. Just depends on your preference on that one. Although I do think anti-flinch will be a lot better on this auto rifle, but it just depends on your preference on that. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Yeah, don't snooze on this auto rifle. I'm telling you all right now, this thing is going to creep up on the meta very, very fast. And especially as more people get more rolls on this thing. And if the day ever rises that lightweight pulses get nerfed, this thing is going to rise to the top of the ranks. I'm calling it right now. While you have the opportunity now before it gets power crept into the meta, hunt for this thing now. People are probably going to be rocking Zen Moment and Kill Clip, but my role is going to be Zen Moment Onslaught, so that way people, even though they get Kill Clip, I can still outbeat them in TTK values. But yeah, definitely hunt for this thing. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe if you did. Let me know which weapon you want me to review next, and I'll catch you in the next one. And don't you ever forget to keep it chill.